of different lives.
It's okay. I'm sharing them.
Yes. I have a lot of different ones. Okay, so this is YouTube.
Okay.
This is Spotify, Apple, and Pandora. That's Facebook, Bigo, Tagged, and Fanbase.
Oh my God, you're so hooked up. I don't even know what half those platforms are. I'm old fashioned. I have Facebook and Instagram.
See, I'm trying to transition from Facebook and Instagram.
To what?
To
all these,
to
all these other
Fanbase, and I'm usually on these other ones as well.
Yeah.
But imagine all of those other ones, including Facebook, and so this one's Facebook, and including like TikTok and Instagram, which I'm usually in.
So I tried Twitter and I have a Twitter account, but like I have no friends. I barely follow anyone. I forget to even post on there. TikTok is something I'd like to get into, but I have no idea.
See, if you never download it, you won't be able to.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of my friends, her son has a huge following on a lot of these platforms. Did you ever hear about the Black Times Ty Baker? He was one of the protesters that was arrested during 2020. He's a photojournalist, and so he has a TikTok account and does a lot of really awesome educational videos on current events. And so she had me downloaded so I could watch his stuff, but I don't really know how to use it.
Right.
So
Wow. Oh yes, you do, because you will be a big success on there. And you know they're actually selling phones for up to $50,000 right now with TikTok installed.
Are you kidding me?
I'm serious. I just showed my best friend, like literally the highest one right now is 50. I think it might be higher than that.
So tell me more about that. So basically, if you didn't download it, you just can no longer download it. Why?
Yes. Because it's technically when they banned it, and they brought it back, they didn't bring it back to like that, to the apps, to where like they said if you have it still installed, then you can still use it. But if it's not installed, then you're tough luck. Which I deleted it immediately when they said it was gone. I was like, bye. You're not going to make me feel like you got something over me.
Yeah.
And just give it to me when you want.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just felt like that was just more to it than the eye means.
That you needed to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, so welcome to the couch. Yes. Welcome to the couch, everybody. This is Sara, Bana. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
I love you.
Yes, I love you
Thank
too, girl.
So
I've been watching you.
Me.
No problem. I'm super excited to have you. My girl Connie. Shout out to Connie Johnson, because I just texted her today. I'm like, yeah, you make sure you tune in. She was like, oh, well, that's my girl. I'm like, that's my girl.
Senator Connie Johnson, mother of criminal justice reform, one of my mentors. She's embraced me since I was younger, and so I just graceful, one of the most graceful women I've ever come across.
Wow, you said since you were younger, you still look young.
Thank you. I'm 40, you all, almost 40.
What?
So, yeah.
Girl, you look damn good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hot shit. Now, you weren't always able to vote till about 10 years ago. What made you to finally being able to vote to running for Oklahoma County Commissioner, District 1?
So I am an immigrant to this country. I moved here with my mom and my sister originally. It took my dad another nearly 7 years before he was able to make it over. And so when my mom became a naturalized citizen, and for what many people don't understand, the line to immigration is very long. And even though we had legal status, temporary status upon entry, it literally took years before we were granted what they call a green card, which is a temporary legal status, which allows you to get employment, allows you to get a driver's license. It took nearly about another 6-8 years before my mom became a citizen. And at that time, I was already over the age of 18, which required me to go through the citizenship process separately than from my sister and my mom. And so it wasn't until approximately 10 years ago or so before I had obtained the right to vote, because if you're not naturalized citizen or you weren't born here, you don't automatically have the right to vote.
Right.
And that's the reality for so many people. Aside from undocumented folks, it's also the same situation for a lot of folks with prior felony charges on the record. And so I know firsthand what it means to be what I call a third-class citizen, because not only did I not have the right to vote, but I'm also a woman who's a minority, and we all know how that goes for us in this state. And so I think it's really unfortunate that we deprive so many people from just a simple basic right to participate and have a voice in our representative democracy.
Yeah. Wow. Now, do you have dual citizenship?
No, I don't. No. Just I'm here. Yeah, and that was the other ugly thing about it is like my parents were political asylees to this country, so I literally had no home country. I had no protection from any country. You know what I'm saying? And so there was this identity crisis of not belonging anywhere, not even having a passport, you know? And so when I became naturalized, that was a really personal, emotional experience for me. Particularly for someone like me whose life has literally been radically impacted by politics, right? I was born towards the end of the Iran-Iraq War. I remember bombers going overhead and bombings happening, people dying. I remember the post-war effect, right, of the lack of resources and goods, right? And people having to stand in long lines to get just the basic home goods that they needed to survive. And believe it or not, at that time, Saddam Hussein, who attacked Iran over oil, was actually being supported by the United States and actually used sarin gas, which is, weapons of chemical war and banned across the world. And so I experienced that. And so as a very young age, being born in the middle of that, and then also getting old enough to recognize the revolution that had taken place and how my immediate family was impacted and their lives were in danger, their economics were in danger, their political ability to protect themselves and represent themselves was in danger. You literally are growing up at 3-4 years old with this real awareness of politics and just existence, right? And how politics, impacts your existence. And so politics was something I was always interested in. Like how 7-year-olds are watching cartoons. I was hanging out with my grandpa watching CNN or PBS.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff was like in Iran when I was a little kid. You weren't allowed to, the media, the TV is censored. There was like 3-4 channels and there were state-ran media. So my grandpa would have to go through extreme channels in order to access, world news in order to get the truth about what's really happening, right? And so I remember like running around listening and fine-tuning into that. And then when I moved here, obviously I was aware around 16 years old, I started getting politically engaged, working on political campaigns, working on issues that impact our communities, with programs that educate young people about our politics, our procedures, our institutions. So, and so being that person and then not being able to vote until like you're 30, it's just, it was kind of hard. It was hard on me. Most people, maybe they wouldn't care, but someone like me, it was,
it was huge, because you were already into the political field,
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, I'm doing so much for the political field. Why can't I vote?
Yeah. But here's the beautiful thing, and I hope this inspires people, and I hope this inspires people who have struggles when it comes to political stuff, whether it's not having the right to vote these days, currently, is if a person like me can go from not even having the right to vote, not even having the right to be here, right, to have that full protection as an American citizen, and within such a short time frame, I've been able to be a public servant in the capacity of a councilwoman, and to today be a candidate for county commissioner. Should one inspire us about the country that we live in and that it is still tangible for us to make those movements, but that it can also be possible for other individuals. Now we have to change some laws, right? We have to become more inclusive, but the fight is there, and it takes all of us to make this a reality for anyone and everyone that's interested, right?
Exactly. Now you stated a few minutes ago that, dealing with, you seeing missiles and planes and all of this. What did that do to your mental health?
I was young enough where I didn't really understand the reality of war until I literally was confronted by it. I mean, I heard my adults around me talking about it, the Iraqis, they're coming. And you have to understand at this point, my grandpa had a few properties, and there was one incident that I remember very clearly because I wasn't centrally located in the country. I was on the border where all the oil fields were, and that's where the Iraqis and Saddam were attacking that region. And I literally recall, the sirens going off, news, coming on that, they're coming. I remember my mom was hiding in the closet. My courageous, wild, crazy grandmother who feared nothing is running barefoot in the backyard looking at these bomber planes that are flying extremely low. And I'm, of course, chasing after her, screaming at them, you bastards, you're killing people. How dare you? Don't you have mothers? Don't you have sisters? And I don't know how she didn't get bombed. But it was, I mean, seriously, to think back about, you're a child, you don't realize what's happening. But when I think back about it, of her courage and, the fact that she wasn't attacked that day.
And she was even speaking out.
Yeah, it just, as a woman, particularly in that area, was just, I kind of think I took a little bit after my grandma when it comes to that stuff, because my mom is much more timid. She, and she's back in the closet screaming, we're dying, freaking out. And I recall that day, shortly after my uncles came, and I guess they had dropped some bombs in the town next door. And I remember him having us get in a truck. He didn't want to leave us behind, but he had us get in a truck to go there to see if we could help. And I just remember seeing just the buildings had just been demolished, and there were bodies and people screaming. And my uncle wanted to help, but then he recognized it was really traumatic on me, and my mom was going crazy. And he's like, I need to get the women home, and then I'll try to come back and see what I can do. So it wasn't until that direct experience that I really understood what war actually meant. And I recall post that experience, I think until about the age of being 10, 11, 12, I had this fear of Iraqi soldiers, right? And I contributed to the Iraqi soldiers because that was my direct experience, right? So, and I share that to say it was a limited perspective, right? If the Iraqi soldiers come, it's dangerous, right? But the reality is, it doesn't matter who is coming or what uniform they're in. The impact of war is real, and the psychological trauma. And I'm lucky to have made it out. And we live in an era, the war is ongoing across the world. We don't talk about it enough, and there are children, there are human beings that are suffering as a result of it. So.
Yeah. Wow. And, to go through that at a young age, and I don't know if you still have maybe flashbacks about it.
I don't honestly have flashbacks in the form of like PTSD or anything, but I recall it, and it's hard for me to think about those images that I have in my head for too long. It makes me sad. It makes me want to cry. It takes me to a vulnerable place psychologically and mentally. But I don't know, maybe it was because I was young enough and I didn't really have a deep understanding of what it was exactly I was seeing, that maybe it didn't have that type of an effect on me. On my mother, it's a totally different effect, and I think that it has caused her long-term, trauma as a result of it. So, wow. But my mom's had a real rough life. She was around for the revolution. She's just seen so much happen. Her sense of security in the world around her is a lot less than I would say what I feel on a day-to-day basis. So.
Wow. If you guys are just now tuning in, it's the Couch Chronicles, where it ain't no fucking limits. I got Sara, Bana on the couch. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get it started. I know we've been talking already, and you're probably like, wait a minute, but you already... Yeah, we didn't do the intro, so let me go ahead and give you the intro, and we're going to finish up.
It's time For the Couch Chronicles, where there ain't no fucking limits.
Every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 8 Central Time. You don't want to miss a couch. And now we're live every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. So that's the couch every day of the week. Yeah, tune in. You don't want to miss this shit.
Period.
It's the Couch Chronicles, where they know what? I know you said it.
Y'all, Sara Bana on all social media. Make sure that you follow her and support her campaign. We're going to keep on going. I was going to play a song, but we ain't going to do that. I'm going to play it later. I got y'all because we on the couch again later with another guest tonight. Now, you're a big advocate for DHS and the corruption and deaths in the Oklahoma County Jail, and a lot more. What inspired the advocate in you?
So going back again to the whole civic engagement when I was young, at that point I was really interested in our institutions, watching government in practice up close. And I recall being at the state capitol building one day. I was helping a young man who was 16, had been struck by a vehicle, had lost vision. The driver had gotten away, and I was actually taking him to go meet some of the lawmakers up there to share his experience and how we could enhance laws to be make sure we have better protections, particularly on how police respond and accountability. And I met Milton Combs Jr. And I don't know who knows him, but a lot of people do, right?
Yeah.
He's another one of my mentors. Milton's an old-time civil rights leader. He's from California, worked with the Black Panthers, just has seen history in America, right? And we run into each other at the Capitol, and, he gives me a hard time and goes, "You want to help people? Let me take you some places." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll go." And we literally connect, and he started taking me to some of the most marginalized, neglected parts of our city, in Oklahoma City, and confronted me with children and families that were literally suffering, and what I would say were comparable to the third world conditions that I had experienced in the Middle East. And for me, that was something I could relate to, right? So he took me out of the fancy hallways of the state capitol building and these government institutions that are just enormous, and then he took me, to the brunt of the reality of the folks that are suffering. And so I began working with him. He taught me about civil rights work, and so we began helping people. We literally as a team, whether it was housing issues, whether it was violence issues, whether it was police use of force incidences, and through him I met leaders with the NAACP, leaders in all arenas of organizations and issues that work on civil and human rights work. And so that's kind of been my interest, and being able to literally, and I don't know, I had this conversation with Dr. Henderson the other night. He's a huge civil rights icon here in the state, and I would argue nationally, and he also had a lot of suffering in his background. And I asked him, I said, "Do you think it requires one to kind of have some level of suffering in order to be interested in this type of work?" And we both really didn't know the answer, but we just know, I know for me, that helped me relate to the suffering of other people. So their suffering was something that I literally, physically, emotionally felt, and I had this dire need, to provide services and protect them the way I would want to be protected, and empowered, if you will.
Yes. Wow. Now, you promote supporting upcoming businesses and mom and pop businesses.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite mom and pop businesses that you support?
I have lots of them in the Mid-Del community. Ted's Wings, I don't know if you all know where that is, off of Northeast 10th Street. I can't name them off the top of my head, but I like local cafes. I love discovering them. I love randomly just walking into a small mom and pop shop and figuring out what they're up to, and you find incredible food. I'm a foodie. I'm a food person. I like to eat, y'all.
Oh, I do too. I'm vegan though, but I do love to eat.
So you're healthy. I need to get on this vegetarian vegan diet because a lot of meat is not really good for you. But I love discovering local businesses. We need big companies, but one of the things that I see systematically as a matter of practice is too much of our tax dollars are being funneled to support companies and corporations. And unfortunately, I do not see as a matter of practice, that type of level of governmental support being given to small mom and pop shops, right? And so I'd like to see some equity there.
Yes.
And more importantly, I would like to see young people being educated about business ownership, right? Like, for example, in my community, you have lots of young kids who are mowing grass to help their moms make ends meet, right? And they have like 5 to 15 yards that they, mow weekly or whatever. And so I have this concept of why couldn't, for example, the Chamber of Commerce and the city create a program where we're teaching them how to apply for an LLC to establish a business, get a bank account, right? Register with the Secretary of State, and then why aren't we teaching them how to put in bids, for example, for some of the contracts all of our municipalities have, right? Because I can almost guarantee you those kids who live in our community, who are working because they literally have to make ends meet, would probably provide those services, better quality of services, I would argue, for much cheaper. And so taxpayers could save money, but we're also promoting homegrown business opportunities, and we're tapping into young people, right? Food truck industry is another area. There's so many different ways to enter into the business field, and it doesn't have to be huge and giant to begin with, but we start small. But we've got to teach, right, and equip and empower our communities to be able to do that, right? Because we don't have generational wealth, right? We don't have a dad or a grandpa who built a industry and said, oh, here's the keys to the industry, right? And so we need resources and individuals that are willing to contribute to our ability to start off.
That's real. And I promote, supporting upcoming businesses, Black-owned businesses, felon-owned businesses, because a lot of us, we get out and it's hard for us to find a job, so we have to make a job for ourselves, like hence my podcast, I LLC'd it, this is my job, making music, that's my job, so, and I take it serious, so, when we support upcoming businesses, it not only, it feels good, and you not just helping some big old corporation that you don't even know. Get to know your community.
And we're going to hold corporations accountable, right? Like companies like Amazon who are operating in our backyard and have some of the horrific working conditions, or, not paying people right, and people are struggling to make ends meet, right? And so if we're going to invest our tax dollars in corporations, there's got to be a return for the people who are funding them, as in you and I, the taxpayers, right? But we really got to uplift regular people into business ownership, because it can really help us transition and achieve higher socioeconomics, but we need some resources and some know-how and some training, if you will, in order for our kids to be able to make that transition happen.
Right, that's so real. Now, you've done a lot of protesting, standing on the front line.
I'm a professional protester.
Period.
I like the First Amendment, y'all, and I like to utilize it anytime that I can. And that's the other thing about being an immigrant. Where I come from, if you protest, they may hang you in the town square,
And that's why, actually, the rest of the question is, did you ever fear backlash? And, what helped you stand on a decision of going through with, being on the front line?
So for me, I don't always try to start out on the front line, and people have this misconception, I love to protest, but, I don't need to do it if we can negotiate, and our government institutions can be equitable, fair, just, ethical, moral, right, and operate in a fashion that is serving the public interest, right? But unfortunately, our government is as good as the people who are elected and who represent us.
That's true.
And then, unfortunately, there are individuals who aren't there performing their duties in the interest of the public, but rather oftentimes causing harm, right, to the public. And so, if having meetings and showing them statistics and information doesn't work, if advocacy doesn't work, if offering them alternative approaches doesn't work, if they're literally just being bullies and their policy making and their actions are causing harm to our rights as human beings, if they're resulting in people unnecessarily dying or people having their rights infringed upon, and there is no respect, then at that point, I do think protest is necessary. It's just one of the many peaceful avenues. So my theory is any and every peaceful avenue available within our democracy to protect human rights, to protect civil rights. And so you got to be strategic and see what works, right? Sometimes it's through the legislative office, sometimes it's through the courthouse and filing litigation, right? And sometimes it's through the street. And so people power matters. Our First Amendment is one of the most critical amendments that we have, and so we've got to utilize it. We also have to teach young people how to utilize it in a safe way where they're not putting their liberty at risk, which oftentimes is the case, right? But don't be afraid to protest, use it, learn about it, and do it in a way that promotes civil and human rights, and towards constructive outcomes, but also be educated on it so you don't end up being victimized as a result of trying to do something right. You know?
Because they're quick to victimize you. They will beat you up, no matter if it's for the right, even if you're within your rights.
And we experienced that in 2020 here, right? Post the murder of George Floyd, right? In Oklahoma City, where we were ranked the second most deadly police department in the nation for a department our size, right? You had community members who could literally relate to the pain and the suffering and the images that they saw, right, of George getting killed. And so there was trauma, there was anger, there was righteous outrage, and young people were out in the streets protesting police brutality and demanding reform. And unfortunately, because, you know, they didn't have the experience and wisdom of how to strategically plan out protests, what ended up happening is the Oklahoma City Police Department actually responded to protesters, literally had themselves a police riot, right? You know, was throwing out cannons and burning down trees and shooting people with rubber bullets and water hoses, and literally they were the bullies being abusive, being destructive in our city, did a bunch of property damage in the process of it, wasted a bunch of our tax dollars, and then they ended up blaming the kids, right, the young people, for being the protesters. And then we ended up watching a lot of them get prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We saw some of them be branded as terrorists. For example, the young person I told you about, Ty Baker, photojournalist, he was just there videoing what was happening and was literally charged with some of the highest crimes, false crimes, right? His bond, I think, was millions of dollars. And you need to have his mom on sometime, Sharice Baker. She'll tell you all the details. Literally was arrested, was taken to the Oklahoma County Jail, was booked out. His charges were escalated, and then his bail was increased like millions of dollars. SWAT raids his house to arrest this kid. He has no criminal past, has no past involving violence, right? Wasn't even involved in the actual protest. He was there working as a photojournalist, and ends up getting caught up in this whole mess. And it literally took nearly 3 years for him to be able to put the court process behind him and all of that. And he still has a lot of trauma as a result of it. So that's the thing, is protest, but also kind of learn, right, about how to do it in a safe manner so you don't end up being a victim.
Yes, because you guys don't realize when you're falsely arrested, whether you're innocent or not, guess what? It costs money to get a lawyer, to fight the case, to prove your innocence. It costs.
And we live in a system that wants to coerce you to plead guilty whether you're innocent or not. Right. So, and that's another piece of it, right, that we got to get corrected. So, but I don't want people to be afraid of protesting, right? I just want them to be smart enough, right, to go learn about civil rights and civil disobedience and what their rights are and how you can do it in a safe manner. And then, you know, there are moral actors, right, who do that it's civil disobedience regardless of the consequences, right? People that are willing to take the risk to their freedom and to their lives in many cases, right? So we have to distinguish between those folks that are willing to take the risk. But if you're a person who doesn't want to end up going to jail, who doesn't want to end up getting shot or, you know, being brutalized, you've got to learn the rules so you don't end up becoming a victim of something bigger, right? And we've done a lot of things right. I mean, we've had many marches and, you know, parades and rallies and protests and sit-in where, you know, no one was arrested, no one was harmed, and people can participate on that level. But if you really want to go all the way, right, you need to also be aware that there are some serious consequences to it.
There are. But if you are standing for something, I mean, it's going to come with consequences, because officers don't like to be told that they're doing wrong or that what they don't like to be held accountable. I'm just saying. And if you're just now tuning in, you guys, it's the Couch Chronicles, where it ain't no fucking limits. I'm trying to watch my mouth.
I think you like saying, "Hey, I'm all about free speech. You can use your free speech." I'm telling you.
You guys follow Couch Chronicles No Limits on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts as well, Fanbase, Bigo, Tagged, and there's a new app called Like, Likee. Make sure that you follow. I also posted it on my social media, so make sure that you follow and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, THA-RealJANELL, and visit the websites, which is THA-RealJANELL and THACouch.com. Follow my guests on all social media, Sara, Bana, and you guys make sure you support her campaign. And if you don't, look into it and see why you need to. Tell them why they need to support you.
Because we are, our entire campaign, I'm running for county commissioner in Oklahoma County District 1 in order to save lives in Oklahoma County. I have worked as a civil and human rights advocate in Oklahoma County for nearly 2 decades. 15 years of that work has involved me entering into that Oklahoma County jail, which is deemed unconstitutional by the federal government. And unfortunately, the mortality rates have always been high, but since 2020 alone, we've seen an alarming increase to the mortality rates, where 54 individuals have perished since 2020 alone. Okay, guys, and the mass majority of those deaths were preventable, right? And we are seeing no reform, we are seeing no transparency, no accountability, and literally the next death at the facility is statistically predictable. And so in order to save lives, we need to send someone up there that is not going to be a yes man, that is going to hold folks accountable. And the other piece of saving lives is I worked with the DOJ over the last 2 years on their investigation into the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma County, the Department of Mental Health, Oklahoma City, and the Oklahoma City Police Department for a systemic pattern of violating Title II of the American with Disabilities Act, where we are systematically failing to provide individuals with behavioral health issues help up front through community-based mental health care, drug and alcohol treatment facilities, to be proactive and preventative. And then what we end up doing is allowing the crisis to get so bad where we then pipeline them into institutions, whether they're psychiatric facilities and county jails and Department of Corrections. And it is immoral, it is unethical, it is literally financially costly, and it is unconstitutional. So we need to reform that model. And part of my platform is, and something I've been advocating for 7 years at the county commission and the jail trust, is we need to radically reduce the county jail's population, right?
Yes.
An unconstitutional county jail that has become notorious for being the deadliest jail in America has no business in these conditions pipelining in mass numbers non-violent indigent offenders, right? Because if they weren't poor, they weren't going to be sitting there, right? It's a debtor's jail, right? If they were rich, regardless of the types of crimes they committed, they would be able to post bail, walk out, go back to court until they're convicted or found to be innocent, right? Found to be not guilty, not innocent. So it's a jail and a facility where we are pipelining poor people, and nonviolent folk don't need to be there. And so my solutions have been ending cash bail for nonviolent indigent offenders, and Senate Bill 252 in 2019 would have achieved that across the state and would have radically reduced the county jails population and saved Oklahoma County millions of dollars that could have been rediverted towards preventative mental health care, as well as roads and bridges and all the other things we need as far as core government functions. And one of the things I want to put out there is one thing that distinguishes me from my opponent. One of my opponents is Representative Jason Lowe, voted in opposition to ending cash bail for nonviolent offenders. It was one of the only urban Democrat to do so. That legislation fell by 5 votes that could have literally saved lives. And as a civil rights advocate and investigator who's actually had to investigate the death of nonviolent offenders who died in that facility since 2019, that is offensive to me, right?
Yeah.
So an individual like that who has also endorsed building a larger $1 billion jail, which is only going to increase mass incarceration, I don't think that that's the future we want to head towards, right? I want to think about a future where we're being smart on crime, where we are being ethical and we are being financially sound and responsible. And what we know is Oklahoma historically has had one of the highest rates of incarceration. We're 4th in the nation right now, right? And there is no reason in the heartland of America, the land of the free, where we should continue mass incarceration. There are evidence-based solutions forward where we can help people and do the ethical, moral, and cost-friendly thing up front by giving them access to mental health care, drug, alcohol treatment services, housing first solutions, addressing poverty issues, and radically reduce the jail's population over the next few years, and build a smaller jail that is humane but focused on housing violent offenders in that facility.
Wow. Right. That's real. Wow. I want you to win.
Thank you.
I got you a whole sign. I told them to bring me a bigger sign because I want the world to see when they driving by that I'm supporting Sara Bana. Yes.
And she lives on a hot street. There's like traffic going by. And I'm like, you want a bigger sign? We're there.
Yes. Now, did you pick District 1 or how does that work?
So I live in District 1. So I live in the heart of northeast side in Midwest City, technically. But the northeast side of the county is literally, kind of the same as you go from Oklahoma City towards east until you get to the more rural parts of the county. So 18 years I've lived there. And prior to that, so when I moved to the U.S., I actually grew up in Del City, learned English in elementary school there. And so I resided in Del City and then met my better half, Chris, who was an Illinoisan. He was in the military, Air Force, and so we were poor, and we were really hoping to buy a home. And so we bought the first home that we came across that we could afford, and it ended up being in Midwest City, and we love it. It's our community, it's our home, it's where we feel comfortable. We love our neighbors, we love our community, and people are gonna have to force me out of Midwest City before I get out. So, so that's how I ended up running for District 1. It's where I've been. It's a community that I love and cherish.
Right. Now, it seems like our tax money goes straight to the wrong pockets.
Yes.
The county government.
Yes.
Now, what can we do to hold them accountable about the money that's supposed to be spent building the community?
Yeah, so we need to stop the corruption, you all. And people get offended when I use that word, like it's some, vulgar word. Corruption happens. Corruption happens in every government institution across the world, and corruption happens in Western democracies as well. As a matter of fact, the United States has a ranking of how often corruption happens in our county and state and local government institutions. That's why we have the state auditor, right? She literally audits accounting, and we find municipalities, towns, county governments, state institutions committing fraud and embezzlement more regularly, more often than I'd be comfortable with, right? But it's happening. And what is corruption? Corruption is fraud. It's abuse of power. It's cronyism. It's favoritism. It's nepotism, right? It's where an individual who has been delegated power from the voters is abusing that position of power for personal or political gain, right? So it's happening regularly, and unfortunately, one of the things, that's another reason I'm running, aside from saving lives, the number 2 reasons, because I started attending the county commission meetings and jail trust meetings because of my concerns about the inhumane and unconstitutional crisis at the county jail. And while I'm attending meetings on a week-by-week basis, I'm becoming aware of the financial corruption that is happening literally week after week, right? The conflicts of interest that exist and and the waste, the government waste that exists, right, within our county government. So the county is broke, not because we're not giving them enough money, is that our county commissioners have become corrupt and they're wasting our money, and they've turned our county government into basically their personal business to serve their campaign contributors. And so if you go through their ethics reports, what you'll find is stakeholders and special interest groups and people who want to influence the outcome of our county government, giving them the maximum allowable amount. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is, if you're paying close attention, is a lot of those same individuals are appearing on agenda items to buy this piece of land, to contract for this service. Does that make sense? And so that's corrupt. It's unethical, right? And so we need to stop that. And this practice of buying and selling our county elected officials has to be eradicated in order for us to protect and preserve the public interest, right? And that was one of my commitments. I didn't take a single penny from the tycoons and the millionaires and the billionaires who want to profiteer off this larger billion-dollar jail and the other issues related to our county government. So we got to stop the corruption.
Yes, we do. And I'm down to help any way I can.
Thank you.
Oh,
Come protest with me.
Yes, no, seriously.
I know you will.
Oh yeah. I was actually protesting before. Well, last year, at the beginning of last year, I spent my whole half of the year in a wheelchair. So it was like all those surgeries had put me back. So I wasn't able to be on the front line. But I was, trust me. I would be there. I don't care wherever we at. Where y'all at, I'm going to be there. I'm going to meet y'all there, and I'm bringing my camera and my microphone.
And this type of protest I'm talking about really isn't even a protest. That's actually the wrong vocabulary for it. Is being civically engaged and active, right? So when I go to the county government meetings, unless there's a hot issue going on, it's usually me and maybe one other regular person there. Sometimes it's just me.
Yeah,
you
I know Darren.
Darren
makes it there a lot.
He makes it there a lot, right? And so if citizens are engaged, then they are more aware and informed, right? And so by being aware and informed and being at the right place, when you see something that's wrong, you can speak out about it, expose it, and raise the awareness of more people, right? And the hope is that that will deter your politicians, your public servants from the misconduct. Right.
That's real. Now, hearing that another commissioner before you was the best, does it intimidate you?
No. I think it makes me want to, learn from what they did right. And make sure that I'm learning and making sure that I am also able to meet that standard.
Yes. Facts.
And I've been told Commissioner Willa Johnson was one of the best commissioners this county has had. And that's